Standard 18 is genetic engineering, and it has 4 types of that we talked about. Artificial selection, genetic modification, cloning, and gene therapy. Okay, so for artificial selection, you take 2 animals, and this is done a lot with dogs. Alright, so say this dog has spots as one of its traits, and people want to cross it with another dog. And this dog, let's say, has stripes. And so say someone wants to have a dog with both stripes and spots, so they would breed these 2 animals, a male and a female, from this, one from stripes and one from spot, to try to get both of those into one animal. Okay, so obviously that's not usually a trait they try to breed for, but there are other traits like the shape of the body, the size of the animal, the temperament, and shape of the head, and other characteristics like herding. And so that's artificial selection. They can do that with animals, and they could do that with plants also. So we talked about like squash plants. So if there was a green squash plant and a yellow squash plant, so let's just pretend that's yellow. And they wanted to mix these 2 to combine certain traits from the yellow squash and certain traits from the green squash. That's zucchini. Then they would have to go to the flowers of the plants. So let's say here's leaves of this squash plant. It's like a big old bush. And then along this is the flowers. Or the flowers. So a gardener who would want to breed one squash plant with another, let's say here's the other squash plant. I'm just going to draw it as a big blob. And then its flowers. So the breeder would have to take a paintbrush and brush it on the pollen of these flowers and mix it with the pollen of these flowers, and vice versa. So then you get a plant that crossed between both of those. And then the resulting squash might look like this. Partially green and partially yellow. Or it just might be a mix of those 2 colors. So that's artificial selection. So we might select for the colors, that's the trait, or other properties that are a part of an organism. We might select for like how sweet a fruit is. We want a piece of fruit to be more sweet. And so we combine certain character traits of two different plants and try to create a different piece of fruit that has those characteristics that we desire. So that's artificial selection. That has nothing to do with actually the DNA and the cells. We don't go into the cells as, scientists or as gardeners or as breeders and make changes ourselves in the cell. We just match up the animals and allow them to mate. So genetic modification is when they go into the cells. So they take the microscope. Okay, this is not going to be good because I'm not very good at drawing microscope. Once I look at a picture, that goes like that. And we have the lens. And we have the plate. But they have to take the cells and then into the nucleus and then the DNA and change it in there. Obviously, they don't do that on a microscope, but I'm just using that as a demo for we've got to get down to the genetic level in order to make changes. So they have done this, especially with foods, and they call them GMOs, genetically modified organisms. They do them with animals also. There's a lot of controversy over that, whether this is good for us or bad for us when we actually eat it. And some people think it's not good for us and it's not good for our environment. And other people say that it is safe. So that's genetic modification. Cloning is another thing that we didn't get too much into that. Gene therapy, that's when there are diseases or genetic disorders that they are working to undo, but this is still in the experimental stages. Okay, so that's what you need to understand about genetic engineering. We're going to go on to next claims, identifying claims, because that's what this standard really focused on, claims and finding evidence of those claims in a paragraph.